A while back, Lord Whitewolf released a video going over the Brawlhalla Iceberg, but considering it's been over 3 years now, I thought it was finally time to release a brand new one with many new entries. So I present to you guys the Complete Brawlhalla Iceberg. I hope you guys enjoy. Sandstorm is the most popular pro player in all of Brawlhalla. He's won 5 world championships and has won over $250,000 from tournaments alone. Brother is loaded. Pretty self-explanatory, but although Brawlhalla was officially released in 2017, the early access was available on Steam since 2014, making it over a decade old by now. I think this is just referring to the fact that Artemis's side sig is super annoying to play against and is used a lot by sig spammers. True combos are combos in Brawlhalla that have no dodge windows, meaning there is no escape to them if you get hit with it. But they are usually only 2-hit combos and are generally pretty uncommon. Although we have experimental 1v1s, it doesn't follow the same rule set as competitive 1v1s. For example, there's a way different map pool and gadgets always spawn, and a lot of people don't actually like this because it makes experimental feel a lot more gimmicky than regular 1v1s. I genuinely did not know this for like the first 5 years of playing this game, so for anyone as dumb as me, yes, Nyx is a girl. Brawlhalla has a subreddit that is notorious for having people complain about literally anything. Seriously, it's a major issue that makes the community seem really miserable. Like, I understand voicing your complaints about the game, but my god, the subreddit is sometimes insufferable. This obviously just refers to a phrase that a lot of Brawlhalla players use after they beat someone, but in all honesty, it's super overused at this point. We really need a new insult to drop because it's overdone by now. Crossovers are a controversial topic in Brawlhalla for 2 different reasons. The first being that the price of the crossovers are usually very high, which makes the majority of players upset. But the second reason refers to the fact that crossover skins are seen as pay to win because they change the animations of Legend's signatures and can make them really hard to recognize. But this could also be referring to the fact that Brawlhalla has some of the most crossovers amongst any game on the market right now, which is pretty insane to think about. This entry could mean a lot of different things, however, I'm pretty certain it's just referencing the fact that Brawlhalla is played strictly as a party game for a large majority of players, and most of those players have no idea of the competitive side of the game. Kind of like Smash Bros, please don't kill me for saying that, but it's just referencing the fact that there's a lot of very casual players and not as many competitive players. Foda is the esports director at Brawlhalla and is one of the main reasons the game has gotten as big as it has. Plus, he's a really nice guy. Everyone give Foda some love. Bro is an absolute legend. A zero to death is a term used in fighting games for when someone takes a stock from 0 to a kill without taking any damage themselves, and is usually done with a flashy combo. To anyone that somehow didn't know this, every stage in Brawlhalla has its own custom music, and I must say, some of the music absolutely slaps, especially Miami Dome music. This entry just refers to a corporation that exists in the Brawlhalla lore. I'm honestly surprised this was listed so early, because I honestly didn't even know this existed, but still a pretty cool trivia fact. Stalker was an unreleased legend that was supposed to come out alongside Koji and Ember, but for unknown reasons never did. However, we do know that she would have had Lance and Katars as her main weapon combo. This entry honestly sounds insane if you don't know what it's referring to, but back during the beginning of the Brawlhalla competitive scene, a player named Dobreen found a combo for Hammer that consisted of a D-Light, chase dodge recovery into a down air, which was one of the flashiest combos during that time period, so the community ended up giving it a special name of the Russian Mafia. Back in 2020, BMG released an update that introduced new AI to their bots, and with this you could choose harder difficulties, with Chosen being the most difficult. And surprisingly, they were a lot better than the average player, so beating one of these Chosen bots was somewhat of an achievement amongst the casual community. Since Orion is a legend synonymous with sig spamming, the majority of players honestly hate him, so in turn they started making it a meme to say "Yellow Man bad," which sounds really bad out of context, and I'm sure is the reason why this hasn't been said in a couple of years, but it was a very popular meme back in the day. As I mentioned earlier, crossovers are already a very controversial topic, but when the Steven Universe crossover came out, people were even more angry when they realized that Stevani had one of the most broken signature effects in the whole entire game. It essentially made you go invisible during a portion of the sig, which was very unfair competitively, and made it the first skin to be undoubtedly pay to win. These cardboard weapons were once the default weapon skins during the game's alpha versions, but they were later removed early into development. However, you can still see them in the modern version of the game with the use of a glitch. The MK1 cannon was a weapon skin found in the game files that was never released and is completely unclear as to what it was intended to be used for, but most people believe it was a scrapped weapon skin for a DLC. This entry is referring to the Rano Wushang skin, which is technically the first crossover in the whole entire game. However, it's not an epic skin and was only added because of a challenge between the Brawlhalla team and the rivals of Aether team. And as a result of the challenge, both games added skins that represented the other person's game. Since the early versions of Brawlhalla were so different, many people wanted to play those earlier versions, and eventually people found ways to essentially downgrade your game and experience old Brawlhalla. Many people believe that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossovers were a ploy by Nickelodeon to promote their own fighting game, as Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl released less than a month later after their crossover released in Brawlhalla. But whether or not this is true is unknown, but regardless, let's just say it definitely didn't work. Back in 2020, the Brawlhalla World Championship had to be held as an online tournament because of COVID, but since this was the biggest tournament of the year, the developers still wanted it to be a hyped up event, so they made the decision to give out metadev skins as watch time rewards on Twitch. However, this would become one of the most controversial decisions in Brawlhalla history, because before this, the only way to get these skins were by going to an actual in real life Brawlhalla tournament and meeting a developer of the game, so they were extremely rare before this incident, but now they are very common amongst the community. Cannon is one of the only weapons in the whole entire game to get a complete rework. The rework itself ended up having very mixed opinions, but the majority of Cannon mains really disliked it and made a lot of them stop playing the weapon entirely. Earlier, I talked about true combos and how they are usually pretty uncommon. Well, Cassidy is one of the only legends to not only have a true combo, but that true combo also including a signature attack. The combo is on her hammer and is a very easy D-light followed by an N-sig. During the early stages of Brawlhalla, there were no dodges and even no dash mechanics, which made the game extremely sluggish and uncompetitive, so luckily this was changed very early on in development for the more fast-paced gameplay we have today. In the Brawlhalla lore, it is confirmed that Brynn is in fact Sir Roland's daughter. Back in 2020, Greatsword was the newest weapon in the game, and it was completely broken. Like, there's no sugarcoating it, it was insanely busted, but even worse was the fact that it was released just before the 2020 World Championship, and instead of banning the weapon in the upcoming tournament, they made it tournament legal for some reason, which gave pros very little time to prepare and resulted in every single player using Greatsword in the tournament, which sparked the most dreadful meta in the whole entire game's history. In the Steam version of Brawlhalla, the skulls on the map Shipwreck Falls can be removed by using the launch option No Skulls, and I kid you not, this option was added after a player on the Brawlhalla subreddit asked how to remove the skulls due to their mother seeing them in the game and thinking the game was evil. I honestly can't find anything about this entry, however I think it's safe to assume that at one point BMG may have planned on giving BCX winners custom skins. However, at this point that has not happened, but hopefully one day it will be implemented because I think that's a really cool idea. Although Ezio is a fairly new legend, it was revealed by the devs that Ezio had been an idea for a very long time but was just never executed on until very recently. This achievement is considered to be the hardest achievement in the whole entire game because to get it you have to reach wave 25 in horde mode with the damage set to 100% or lower, which to anyone who hasn't tried it I recommend you do just to understand how hard that actually is. One of the longest lasting glitches in Brawlhalla is the visual pose glitch that happens when you quickly switch between two characters, which just ends up creating the most cursed poses you will ever see. This entry just refers to a very popular ship people have made between Queen Nai and Sentinel. Nothing more needs to be said, just don't be weird. Thatch is one of only a few legends that got a complete design rework. They most likely did this to make him fit into their art style a little bit better, but old Thatch will never be forgotten. This refers to the fact that Magyar was originally drawn as a girl with a soul dress, so the majority of Magyar fan art actually uses the original design instead of the male version that's currently in the game. This phrase is used in a majority of Battle Pass missions, which essentially just means that some of the arenas we fight in are homes to some of the Brawlhalla characters. A lot of people hold the belief that BMG can't nerf Scythe anymore due to the fact that it's such a popular weapon, and if they do, they will lose a large chunk of their player base. But this is obviously just a theory, and in all honesty is probably far from the truth, as BMG has nerfed Scythe plenty of times over the years. The title kind of explains it all, but for those who don't know, dexterity is pretty much a useless stat that doesn't change the gameplay of a legend whatsoever. Brawlhalla Grand Slam is essentially a browser variation of Brawlhalla that was released in 2022 and can still be played to this day, but the gameplay is very different from traditional Brawlhalla and has more of a point and click type of gameplay, but it's still pretty cool to see that Brawlhalla actually has an official browser game because I had no idea this existed. This is a pretty self-explanatory entry, but still a cool piece of trivia for people who didn't know, as it's a really random mechanic to have in the game. When looking through the old Brawlhalla trailers, a fan of the game found Magyar in the background of a trailer released in 2020, which confirmed the fact that Magyar was hinted a year before his official release in 2021. Back in an old YouTube video documenting the creation of Brawlhalla, it was revealed that Lin Fei had many different dragon variations before they finally settled on the design we all know today. The bird list was a list of community demands drawn up by Bird IRL on Twitter. However, on a now deleted livestream, Matt Woomer, who is the director of Brawlhalla, slammed the list, which was very controversial because a lot of people did not like his response, so it just created a lot of drama in the community. As a result of the canon rework, Brawlhalla stated that the reason they did the redesign in the first place was because they quote-unquote didn't like the canon's old design, which then resulted in people just claiming that BMG straight up hated the weapon, which just isn't true. People always say that the experimental queue has a hidden elo system, and in my experience, I believe that as well, but it's never been officially confirmed, so players are always debating whether or not it's actually true. But the general consensus is that all game modes have some sort of hidden MMR, it's just that the ranked modes are way more strict about it. This is just referring a weird-ass copy pasta that was popular for a short while in the Brawlhalla community, and is honestly not something I wanted to describe any further, but I think you can kind of get the picture. Very strange activities from the Brawlhalla community. Instead of the emojis we have at the end of the matches today, Brawlhalla used to have a post-game chat where you could talk to your opponent, and obviously with a feature like this, everyone was extremely nice to one another. But in all seriousness, it was just an extremely toxic experience most times, so BMG decided to remove it to make the game seem less toxic. Although I will say post-match chat did have a few shining moments, and I wouldn't be opposed to bringing it back. This is just not okay. Why does this exist? Like, genuinely why? It worries me that this is a real entry, and for that reason, I will not be discussing it further. God bless. Lucian has had many redesigns over the years that it's honestly hard to keep track of, but if you didn't know, he was originally designed with a red coat that was later removed for his gray coat. But then the Brawlhalla team went back and forth on if his coat should have straps or buttons, but they eventually decided on the buttons with the gray coat as his official design. Yeah, apparently there's some guy that constantly begs BMG to add Sonic into the game, and honestly, pretty valid. Yeti Taros is one of the rare skins in the whole entire game because in order to get it, you have to buy a piece of merchandise from the Yeti store, and most of the products are upwards of $20 and sell out extremely quickly, making the skin very limited. This just refers to a YouTube trend created by Kozlix, who would constantly experiment with different weapons on super high amounts of dexterity, and I guess he just used 69 for like clickbait or something, I'm not quite sure. When you equip the Iron Legion Zol skin with black colors, it used to show red on the center of his chest, which to a lot of players looked a lot like a blood stain, so in order to censor this, they made the color purple instead of red. In the game files, there are various different early weapon designs. However, one of the concepts was a rifle weapon, which is a weapon type that interests a lot of people. However, many people believe it's just an early version of blasters and will never be added into the game, but still, a lot of people really want it added. I really want to know what this entry refers to, but after about an hour of research, I couldn't find anything related to this. So if any of you guys do have an answer to this, I will pin your comment on this video because I am genuinely curious, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are too, so hopefully there is a hero in the comment section. Some skins in Brawlhalla are synonymous with toxic players, the most popular of which is Fenrir Mordex, but let's be honest, the most toxic skin is definitely Macho Man. The Harvest Scythe is the predecessor to the Autumn Harvest Scythe, which is a very rare weapon skin that a lot of players wanted, so as a compromise, BMG released a slightly different variation for those people while also keeping the rarity of the original. When first introduced, this color was available during the Mountain Dew event and was unlocked per legend by winning a matchmaking game as that legend. But this did not unlock the color for future legends, so the color was later re-released as a store code through Brawlhalla viewership rewards. Hardy MJ was a pro Brawlhalla player who was banned by BMG because of a few replies he made on Twitter. However, a lot of people disagreed with this decision because it was honestly irrelevant to the game itself, and after a while the ban was officially lifted. This just refers to a couple of weird maps that can be found in the game files. They were presumably much bigger versions of regular maps. For example, there is a small Brawlhaven and a crazy Brawlhaven. Unfortunately, these versions never released, so we don't officially know what they mean. On blasters, there is a glitch that allows you to perform a ground pound instantly, but the input to perform it is almost frame perfect, making it one of the hardest mechanics to learn in the whole entire game. Fire Diamond was a theoretical rank made up by the community members who wanted a rank beyond Diamond. And of course, this idea turned into somewhat of a joke, but a line of text in Brawlhalla's code did reference a Fire Diamond loading frame at one point in time. Unfortunately, it was never officially added though. But with Valhallan, I guess the joke kind of turned into somewhat of a reality. Cassidy's Cupcakes was a minigame added for April Fools in 2016 and could be accessed through a dedicated button on the main menu, but was only available for a few days, and the minigame essentially turned Brawlhalla into an idle game where the player's objective was to help Cassidy bake as many cupcakes as possible. And let's just say it was very scuffed. According to the lore, the most common way to get into Valhalla is to die, and with Kaya canonically being 14 years old, it technically means that she did die as a child. I'm telling you guys, this Brawlhalla lore, it goes crazy. When hovering over Thea on the main menu screen, after a while she will get impatient and start tapping her foot, which is honestly a really cool detail considering she is the fastest legend in the whole entire game. At certain healths, Katars can hit 2 recoveries in a row as a completely true combo, and it is the most frustrating thing in the whole entire game. In Brawlhalla's lore, Thor is mentioned as the legend who protected golem slaves who were used by the Asgardians to do manual labor for the city. Again, this Brawlhalla lore gets deep. This is actually a very useful website that connects and compiles every piece of Brawlhalla lore and explains it thoroughly. I highly recommend you guys check it out because Brawlhalla lore, as I mentioned, is actually very interesting. Out of all the weapons in the game, Unarmed actually has the most true combos out of all of them, so people often joke that Unarmed is superior to any other weapon. Honestly, I have no idea what this means, and I don't really care to find out, so, I mean, if you guys know, let me know, but I'm not gonna search this up, I'll be honest. Blasters in the very early versions of Brawlhalla were extremely broken because most of the moves had no stun frames, meaning you could essentially spam moves while carrying all your momentum. But luckily this was fixed a while back. As with most games, Brawlhalla is a victim of power creep, leaving a lot of the older legends far less powerful than compared to the newer ones. But I will give Brawlhalla credit because they have made many changes to try and combat this issue, like changing Cassidy's signature kit, but I won't lie, the power creep is still noticeable amongst a few specific legends. There was a concept found in the Brawlhalla game files of signatures that could be activated while fully in the air, meaning you wouldn't have to gravity cancel to perform them, but this stayed as just a concept and was never added, and thank God for this because I don't even want to try and fight that. I mean, I don't have much to add to this, but apparently one singular person works on all the winged characters over at BMG, so shout out to them. Asmodee was a very prominent figure in the Australian Brawlhalla community, but one day she released a twit longer exposing a vast majority of the top pros for being racist, homophobic, or just plain toxic, which actually resulted in all of them getting banned from the game and in turn killing the entire Australian pro scene. This is honestly just a pretty cool trivia fact. I for one had no idea that the gravity cancel platform was made from condensed spite, so definitely an obscure fact. When Brawlhalla was first being made, it was started by 5 friends who all lived in a basement to try and make this game a reality, and 10 years later, they have definitely come a very long way, so shout out to those 5 people. Again, I wish this wasn't a real entry, I really do, but unfortunately I think the title explains it all, so yeah, do yourselves a favor and do not look this up. In late 2018, Brawlhalla was constantly getting DDoSed, and in an effort to stop them, Darkghoul ended up going to a Brawlhalla LAN to discuss a way to mitigate the issue with some of the devs. And his proposal actually successfully worked and essentially stopped all of the future DDoS attacks on Brawlhalla. So another huge shout out goes out to Darkghoul because he is an absolute GOAT of the community. But that is officially the end of the Brawlhalla Iceberg. Let me know if there are any topics I may have missed. I'm sure there are a few, but regardless, I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I really appreciate y'all, so I hope you have a wonderful day.